KSVY, Sonoma.
With my rope and my saddle and my horse and my gun, I'm a happy cowboy. When I'm riding with the sun and I'm always on the run, I'm a happy cowboy. If I'm sitting in my saddle and I'm rounding up the cattle, I'm at home on the range. And I love to hit the leather in any kind of weather, and I know I'll never change. With my rope and my saddle and my horse and my gun, I'm a happy cowboy. And when the day is ending, I bless the setting sun, for a happy cowboy's work is done. With my rope and my saddle and my horse and my gun, I'm a happy cowboy. And when the day's ending, I bless the setting sun, for a happy cowboy's work is done. Day is ending, I bless the setting sun, for a happy cowboy's work is done.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to KSVY 91.3. I'm Jeff Gilbert, and this is Jeff's Joint. And today we have a very special guest star, one of the great singers of the 20th and 21st century, the first black singing cowboy in a film, the Bronze Buckaroo, Mr. Flamingo, Herb Jeffries. How are you, Herb? How are you?
How you doing?
Good. Well, I'm glad you're here, and that was the Happy Cowboy, and that was your theme during the Harlem Rides the Range series, correct?
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, we opened, I guess, all of the pictures were usually with the opening song on Harlem Rides the Range, the Bronze Buckaroo, Two Man from Harlem, Two Gun Man from Harlem, and what was the other one?
Harlem on the Range or on the Prairie?
Harlem on the Prairie and Harlem on the Range.
Now, what year did 1937 is the first?
Harlem on the Prairie was the first one.
And how did you get the idea to do those films?
Well, I had been traveling down south with Earl Hines' band, and I saw that all those little tin roof theaters that they had down there that only blacks could go to because of the discrimination. Negroes, we didn't use the term black. We used the word Negro, and Negroes could not go to any theaters but these special theaters that were built for them, and they were playing white cowboy pictures. So and they loved them. They packed these theaters, loving the westerns. So I said, my goodness, if they're going to these theaters and packing them up, waiting out in the street for the next showing, I said, why doesn't somebody make some western pictures with all colored cast?
Right.
That was the real expression that was used to identify Negroes in those days was colored.
Yeah.
And so I went back to Chicago, where I had been working at the Grand Terrace, and with Earl Hines' band, and I tried to raise some money money, find some money to make these pictures. I needed about $20 to $25,000 because pictures in those days were called quickies.
Right.
And we made them in from 5 to 7 days.
Oh, man.
So I went back to Chicago looking for money. I knew a couple of guys back there by the name of the Jones brothers who were policy barons, the numbers barons back there. And I went to them, and they weren't interested. So I happened to be in a little diner about a week later from my failure with the Jones brothers, and I was reading a magazine about a man in California by the name of Jeffries, who was contemplating making a movie with midgets, a cowboy picture with midgets called, the name of it was called The Terror of Tiny Town.
Right, yeah.
And so I said, well, I'll give this guy a call and see if he'd be interested. So I called him, and he said, well, why don't you come out to California and sit here and talk to me and tell me what your idea is, see what we can do. So I got on a train, came out, and the first day I was in his office, he was excited about it. And so we got somebody, he wanted to know who was going to write a script for it. And I didn't know anything about writing scripts in those days. So I saw a bunch of scripts laying down on the floor. Looked like he was getting ready to throw away, and I picked one up, and it said, Sunset on the Prairie. I said, why don't we use this? We're going to change it. The characters in it, and nobody's going to know the difference, and let's use this, and we'll put colored comedians in it and use the colored type comedy. And these guys all write their own comedy anyway, so we'll just let them write that into that script. And he loved it, and we began to cast. And, of course, we got everybody we needed for the script except the leading man. We couldn't find a leading man for it who could ride, sing, do the stunts that had to be done, and act. And so I said, give me a screen test. And he said, no way. He said, first of all, you don't look colored. And he said, it won't work. I said, have you ever lived in a colored neighborhood? He said, no. I said, well, let me take you down to a colored neighborhood. You'll be surprised. The colored people down there who don't look colored. And so I did. I took him, had dinner with him at a restaurant. He saw a lot of mulattoes and Creoles.
Yeah.
And so he gave me a screen test. I wasn't supposed to be in the picture.
Oh, wow.
It just worked out that way.
And there was 4 of those, I guess, right?
We actually did 5. We did one called 20 Notches to Tombstone. But they got in, the financiers got into some kind of quarry, some kind of an argument or something about it, and we only shot on it about 3 days, and they decided to back out.
Oh, no.
So we only did about half of that film, and I don't know whatever happened to.
Yeah, what happened to the footage? I guess it's just
that footage. No.
Now that's kind of a mystery too with the films that are out now.
Well, the whole thing was a mystery due to the fact that nobody knew where any of the footage was.
Right.
On any of it about 25 years later, and then some guy down in Tyler, Texas, who was digging out a cellar of an old house that had a tornado and been blown away, and they found a lot of films in there, not just my film, but other films, because the guy obviously was probably a distributor.
Yeah.
And so they dug them up, and 3 of my films were in there.
Isn't that amazing? And now they're found, and everybody can watch those, and they're out on videotape, I believe, and DVD.
Yeah, they're on videotape. And as a matter of fact, I think there's a company right now that's got them on DVD.
Oh, great.
So you can get them on DVD as well as videotape.
And they're great little pictures, too, I must say,
Well, you got to realize it goes back to 1936, so we had a lot of learning to do in the motion picture business,
yeah,
technically as well as acting, performing. And And but that's the beauty of the history of our country.
Right.
You know, there were a lot of Western pictures made by Bob Steele and
Oh, sure.
guys like, oh my goodness, John Wayne.
Tom Keene.
Yeah, he was making those
Yeah.
pictures back there. There's gangs of those cowboys back there that made those pictures. But you know, stuff made, Jeff, stuff that's made on film
Right.
has nitrate in it,
Oh, right.
and the nitrate dissipates,
Right, and it just
falls
yeah.
apart, and so they've lost 50% of all films that were made. It goes back into the early 30s, and prior to that,
Oh, sure.
only 50% of all of them made by any studio remain.
Right, it's a
Because
shame.
of their just folding up. The nitrate just would wipe itself out.
Yeah, it's really a shame. A lot of great classics have been lost that way.
Yeah.
And thanks to a guy that had them in his basement down there, and you know, your
In
films
Tyler,
still live.
Texas, yeah.
That's an amazing story, you know. And
Yeah, very,
thank God they
very,
found
very
us.
lucky.
Now, when you were born in Detroit, Michigan,
I was born in Detroit, that's right.
and did you start singing locally around there? Is that how you started, or?
Well, yeah, because I grew up in a very integrated neighborhood. The fact that immigrants were coming from all over the world after World War I. You got to realize, too, that I'm 95 years old now, or
Right.
not. Rather, I don't like the word old. I use 95 vintage.
That's right.
Yeah, and so we go back, 1911, and a lot of that World War I was over, and there were people coming back and coming over to America, immigrants of all nationalities.
Right.
And we had a depression and a lot of poor people. And I lived in a neighborhood where we were all pretty poor.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we had to. We didn't know in my neighborhood that there was a difference in the ethnicity that we make such a big deal out of these days. People didn't care what the epidermis was. They wanted to eat, and be friends, and get along. We just had a big war, and that was enough
Right.
violence going on. So neighborhoods didn't have any problem with the color of your skin.
Right.
And not in my neighborhood. So, and me, I'm mixed with so many different races. I can be anything you want. I mean, first of all, my mother was Irish. My father was Sicilian.
Yeah.
And, of course, the way that I was able to advertise myself as a colored person was that you got to remember that all people who come from the Mediterranean area, that there was a man by the name of Hannibal who formed an army of Moors, and the Moors all came down and conquered all that Mediterranean area.
Right.
I'm talking about Italy, even into Ireland. The Ireland, they have a group of people in Ireland that call themselves the Black Irish
Right.
because they have Moorish blood.
Right.
And the Moors were not a bunch of idiots either. They were very technical people. They were people who, if you go into Spain, you'll see a lot of the Moorish culture there, and not only architecturally, but in other forms of art. So they were dark-skinned people.
Right.
But first of all, let's look at the whole picture and be honest about it. I, in my world travels, have never seen a white man.
Right.
Not unless he was thrown in a lime pit. I've never seen a black man.
I've read that quote. You're quoted on that.
Yeah, I've never seen a black man. I've been all over Africa, my wife and I. I've seen dark umber,
Yeah.
brown, but never black. And first of all, black means avoid.
You're right. Yeah.
So, I've never seen black or white. I don't know why we continue to use those terminologies.
Yeah, that's true.
And not only that, but I've never. Well, I have. I have seen a Caucasian.
Yeah.
But a Eurasian is one who is part European and part Asian.
Right.
A Caucasian would have to be one who lives in the Caucasus in Russia and is mixed with Mongolian, who are the Asians.
Right.
So there would be, honestly, there are Caucasians, but the people that I've seen back here in parts of Asia, Germany, England, Wales, people like that, I don't recall myself seeing any Caucasians. So
Yeah.
I don't know how that name came by. It's a misnomer.
Well, you have a good attitude toward that, and it's you're colorblind, I guess is the word, right?
But anyway, I don't know anybody would like to have a garden of one-color flowers. I certainly wouldn't.
No.
And I don't think God wanted it, or He wouldn't have made us the way, or put us in the position on this earth to be in in the environment that changed our epidermis and in other parts of the world, even to change the configuration of your physical structure.
Right.
You know, so. But we're learning. We're getting there little by little.
We can only hope.
And so when people ask me what nationality I am, I just say, "What do you want today?" I'm all of them.
There you go. Take your pick.
Yeah.
Now, when you were growing up in Michigan, who would you listen to on records back then, like Jolson, Crosby?
Well, when I grew up, there were two guys doing very good in the recording business. There was a guy named Russ Colombo.
Oh, sure.
And another called Bing Crosby.
Right.
And so I liked them both.
Now, you knew Bing Crosby. I know you used to say blackberries every time he would see you, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, he would always, because I had a big record after I got out of service, and I came back. You know, in 1940, I had the big record hit called Flamingo.
Right.
Well, when I went into the service and got out in late 46, goodbye. It was all over. New generations had come up, and not too many remembered Mr. Flamingo.
Yeah.
So I had to really go into record companies and kind of start all over. And in starting over, I didn't start over as a band singer, because my Flamingo became successful because of one of the great orchestra leaders of our history, and that is Duke Ellington, a composer as well. One of the great composers.
How long were you with Duke Ellington?
Well, I started with him in 1949, and then I was inducted into the service in late 42.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very long, from 49 to 42, that I served with Ellington. But when I came out of there, you know, I was starting a new career as a single without being a vocalist with an orchestra.
Right.
And so I went with a small record company at that time called Exclusive.
Great recordings.
There were a lot of record companies starting. Capitol Records was starting there, and a few others. Because before I went into the service, there was only, there was Victor, Columbia, Decca. MGM was really first starting to grow there. And then there were a few of the subsidiaries, such as, Columbia had a small record company. I think it was called Brunswick.
Right.
And then Decca had a small record company. I can't remember the name of it. But now, today, the difference of saying 6 major record companies compared to thousands of record companies today, you know. So.
Oh, I know it.
So, you know, everybody's a record company. You can be your own record company if you want to, you know. All you have to do is have some good electronic equipment, and you call yourself a record company.
Exactly, yeah, it's not
then
like
with the computer, you can go out and sell your own records over the computer. So it's a whole different world of music and construction.
What was the what was your first?
And all of our arts.
Right.
But anyway, from Exclusive, I had Basin Street Blues, which was Buddy Baker's orchestra, and then and back there in those days too, you know, they had, even in the record companies, it was discriminating, because they the record companies who had the white singers, so-called, had what they would call a race department. So all colored people were put into the race department. So that would be called race records.
Right, yeah.
And they all had them, in those days.
Or a sepia series,
There
I
were
think.
black
Decca had.
records that everybody was on, so I don't know what.
Yeah,
You couldn't tell what color anybody was by playing a
right.
record. You might tell by their accent, but that would be about the only way. And so I had 3 big records with them in 1 year, and I made the all-star record rating for that year with 3 hits. When I Write My Song, Basin Street Blues, and Swallows Come Back from Capistrano.
Oh, right, yeah.
So, boom, I went back up into the clouds again. I got some airspace. And, after that, then, a new change of records went into it, and we started getting people coming into the Americas like the Beatles, who
Right, yeah.
created a lot of it. And then, so the romantic records were beginning to fade out.
Right.
And so we were starting to get a whole different kind of music. And so I saw things starting to drop. And when I was in the service, I'd been in France and England. So, of course, I recognized that France had no jazz clubs there. And they were great jazz enthusiasts, like the Japanese.
Sure.
Great jazz enthusiasts bought a lot of records. And so I said, gee, there's no jazz clubs in Paris here after the war. I'm going to go back to Paris and open up a jazz club. So I went back, not knowing whether I'd be successful or not, but I went back. I figured I'd stay there for a month or 2 and see what I could accomplish. If not, well, I had a return home ticket. So I went there and found a couple of places that looked good down in the basement. And I started the Flamingo, which was very popular in France at that time. I started a club called the Flamingo Jazz Club, and it went big.
Did you perform a lot, or?
Huh?
Did you have other acts besides yourself, I guess? Or?
Oh, yes, sure. I had French acts, and then there were a lot of American expatriates who were living in France, musicians of various different ethnic groups.
Sure.
Of course, the colored musicians loved it because they were not discriminated there,
Right.
at all.
Exactly.
No discrimination on whatsoever. As fast, as big as they could grow, that's the way it was.
Didn't Dorothy
And
Dandridge?
then, there was a Josephine Baker, La Becker,
Sure.
who was a chorus girl out of the Cotton Club and became one of the most famous artists in Europe, as
Right.
a matter of fact. Josephine Baker, and then many others.
And Dorothy Dandridge, wasn't she over there for a while?
Well, Dorothy Dandridge had to go back to Europe to perform because she couldn't play leading roles
Right.
in America. She could only play subservient roles. And, of course, she was a well-educated woman and had no diction. Her diction was perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And if you talked to her on the phone, you couldn't tell what nationality she was.
Right.
She had beautiful diction, well-educated, and, of course, gorgeous,
Right, yeah.
smashing gorgeous.
And your good
And,
friend Harold Nicholas was married to her, right?
Yeah, well, Harold Nicholas finally married her, yeah.
Right.
But she went to Europe, and I guess she went with the Nicholas brothers after she married him because they were well accepted throughout Europe, and I gave her exposure to the motion picture companies over there,
Right.
in which she played leading roles. So, of course, she became very successful in the motion picture business as well as the theater business.
Now, your sister told me a story when you had the club. I think it was King Farouk came in and caused some kind of a problem, then he sent you a ring or something. Do I have that wrong?
Yeah, well, that was my club I had in the south of France because in Paris, your number one name clubs closed because of the summer it becomes very humid in Paris and
Right.
very hot. And of course, clubs are not in new built buildings with air conditioning back in the 40s.
Yeah.
There were still the old buildings, didn't have any air conditioning. You couldn't even put it in there. And where our clubs were, so we would close our clubs and in the summertime open it up in the south of France, which was a fantastic climate down there in the summer, right off the Mediterranean.
Sure.
And so I had my club there, which was a terrace from a big 14-room mansion that we leased. And there's this humongous terrace there. And my club was outdoors with beautiful lights in the trees and things like that, And it became quite popular for the jet set. So what happened is his number one right arm man called me at the club and asked me if I would keep the lights down and not put the show on, and to take all the photographers out of the club because King Farouk wanted to come to the club, and so I wasn't about to say, take all the lights out because that would be a spotlight that was used on the performers. How can you perform without any lights?
Sure.
And so I just told him, I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And they wanted, we had, in those days, we had about 4 or 5 photographers who would take on that concession, and they would go around and shoot pictures of people in their booths and different places. We had booths outdoors in the gardens as well as tables and chairs. So, it would mean, some money not being made, of which we got a percentage of,
right,
of these photographers coming in and taking pictures, and then newspapermen as well coming in, taking pictures of the celebrities who came to the club.
Sure.
So, of course, I refused it. I said, no, I'm sorry. Well, I didn't know King Farouk anyway, so it didn't hit me that hard.
Right.
So then he called me back and said, okay, will you just take the photographers out? So I let the photographers go home, and they came in with about 20 people, I guess, in their party. And of course, the majority of the party were guards, his personal guards, plus the prefect de police, of the French police.
Sure.
But they didn't want anything happen to him while he was in France, so he was well guarded. So we had a space for about 20 people there for him to come in, and so we went on to do our show. Well, I was on stage when they came in. I saw them, the tables were all set up, and I, caused a bit of a disturbance with the show on when they started seating them. And all of a sudden I looked up, and there on this terrace, the wall that goes around the terrace, and then you could look right down into the Mediterranean, to the sea, was built of stone, a big stone. You could walk on it,
Yeah.
It was so wide and heavy. And I looked up there, and I seen this photographer. He wasn't one. My photographers were all women. And I'm looking up and seeing this guy walking on that wall with a camera. And, we didn't know whether that guy had a camera in there or what he had in there.
Right.
But he was walking along there. And when that happened, the flash went off. He took a picture of him. At that time, he had a very young wife. I think she was about 18 years old or something.
Yeah.
And then he jumped off the wall right into the water.
Oh, jeez.
Into the ocean or the sea.
Had to get that shot.
And I guess he had a plastic bag, and he put the camera in and jumped off into the water. In the night, you couldn't see him. But boy, everybody went under the tables because there were many machine guns from the bodyguards out there, and and all that stuff. They didn't shoot, but they were running around looking for this guy, and everybody went under the table and ran out. So it was quite a
lost all your customers.
Yeah, they were running away from about 8 or 10 guys with guns in their hands, looking around trying to find this guy.
Oh, jeez.
So that was quite a thing. And then my show kind of stopped, and the band was playing the national anthem of the French, to try to get the attention of people and get them back organized together.
Sure.
And then the lights all went on, everything over the place, and got on the microphone and announced, this. Well, it was from Perry Matched and big news people in France, and they were on the front page the next day. And then there was a little story which was written by Charlie Knickerbocker, who was a very prominent writer there in France amongst the high social structure. And, I wrote about what a shame it was how they came into my club and interrupted the show and blah, 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 blah. Made quite a thing out of it. So, which was good for me.
Sure.
Publicity,
Right, yeah.
And of course, we get a telephone call where he wanted to apologize for the situation. He said it wasn't his fault, and please not to blame it on him, and blah, blah, blah. And for about 2 minutes, and asked if I would come to the Carlton Hotel and have a glass of champagne with him and make sure that it was no hard feelings. Well, there's so much publicity about it, naturally I accepted it. I went down, I met him, and then after about 2 or 3 months after that incident, he abdicated and left Egypt in his big, magnificent boat with tons and tons of gold bullion.
Oh, boy. Jeez.
And went to live in Rome.
Oh, boy.
And a couple of years later, I ran into him in Rome with his entourage, and always had about 10 people with him. I ran into him, and I was working in a club there, and he invited me up to have a drink with him. And so I went to his table and sat and talked with him. We laughed about the situation, but it was quite an experience.
Wow, and you've met
and
everyone.
Then meeting royal blood.
Right, yeah, and you've performed before royalty and
yes,
the royalty of Hollywood.
I've performed before King Michael of Romania.
Wow.
King Farouk, Ali Khan.
Yeah.
And what other? Somebody else.
Was Rita Hayworth with him at that time, or?
Rita Hayworth was with him when he used to come to my club in Paris. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
She was married to him at the time.
I guess everybody went to your club when they went to France.
Well,
Paris,
it was quite a popular place because what they called these clubs that were the hangouts was called where the jet setters would go.
Yeah.
So it became quite popular.
Wow.
Anyway, about Savannah just brought me a little note here telling me that there is a place, I believe it's up in San Francisco. It's lifeisamovie.com, and that's or midnightrambler.com. You can Midnight Ramble, RAMBLE.com, or lifeisamovie.com. You can get those movies.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good to know. Our listeners would, and also you have a website yourself. Where you
I got several of them. As a matter of fact, we have 2 of them for businesses.
Yeah.
And then we have, of course, Savannah has her own personal, and I have my own personal. I think the one that Savannah uses for business is just herbjeffries.com.
Right, and you can buy CDs on there, and
yes, you can.
And you have a great CD out that's a salute to...
I have to go there myself to buy my own TV.
Oh, no. Well, I guess I'll play a cut. Do you mind if I play one of your
Go
records
ahead,
here?
will you? Sure, by all means.
Well, this is from the album The Duke and I, and it's available at www.herbjeffries.com, and it's a great recording. And here it is, a little salute to your old boss, Duke Ellington.
a thing if you ain't got that swing. Do what, 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 do what. Don't mean a thing, all you got to do is sing. Do what, 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 do what. It makes no difference if it's sweet or hot. You take that rhythm, give it everything it's got. It don't mean a thing, all you got to do is swing. Do what, 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 do what. It don't mean a thing, all you got to do is sing. Do what, 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 do what. It don't mean a thing, all you got to do is sing. Do what, 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 do what. It makes no difference if it's sweet or hot. You take that rhythm, give it everything it's got. It don't mean a thing, all you got to do is swing. Do what, 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 do what.
The great voice of Herb Jeffries, our guest right here at KSVY 91.3. And Herb, that was recorded in 1999, correct?
1999, yeah.
And that's available at your website, www.herbjeffries.com.
We've got some stuff that is more recent. As a matter of fact, of course, that's out of my department. I don't know. We've done. I know I've been in the studio and done 4 or 5 things since then.
Oh, and they're all great, you know.
And I guess they just haven't released them because we don't like to put that stuff out on top of one another too fast. We usually wait a year or sometimes at least 6 months before we put one out. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is just crowd yourself out there, and the DJs won't put them. They'll just pack them up in their own private.
Well, we'll sure play them here, I'll tell you that.
You know.
We play all the time here, so
But it's not a good idea to overload yourself out there, you know, and do stuff.
What do you attribute keeping your voice so great all these years, you know? You sound better than you ever did.
I'll tell you, it's numerous things, you know. If I could say it was one thing, and I think, first of all, if you love your profession, whatever it may be, if you love it, really, truly love it, and love doing it, that's important. The other is keeping your health, such as not smoking.
Right.
I may have a little wine once in a while with my meals, only with my meals.
Sure.
I don't abuse my body. I like the philosophy of a great man who said, "Love thy neighbor as thy love thyself." Well, you got to love yourself first, or you can't love your neighbor as you love yourself. And you have a right to love yourself without ego, totally and completely without ego, because I didn't make me, and I didn't even pick my parents. So God, who set the pattern for all of us, and not only to such an extent that he just made one of each of us, I think that's pretty phenomenal, that we are a original by God. And when you look at it that way, I think it's one way to love some of God's work, and especially if he gives you gifts by which you can go out and be prominent by, you should love his work even more. And so I do, and I find that in doing that, I've taken pretty good care of myself living in a business that has a tendency to make you over-entertain yourself sometimes because of boredom or ego or greatness.
Sure.
That the gift of God gave you. Sometimes you get bored with life because of certain routines that you have to be into, or for what other numerous reasons. So I think when you can take ego and kick it out of your life, and when people come to me to give me any kind of admiration, I always give it back to God, and I say, "Isn't God wonderful?"
Right. He has sure
And
blessed you.
that
I'll tell
way,
you.
why, I'm not letting it affect me to the point of where I don't care about me. I do care about me a lot, and I'm an individual. No one has my voice.
No.
The criminologists have proven that they look at the voice print as well as they do the fingerprint, because that voice print can individualize you to a point where they can find you.
Sure.
So anybody can come up on my stage and join in with me. I'm not competitive with anyone. I have many, many singers that I admire and love to listen to their records. I buy them and listen to them.
Sure.
I like Billy Eckstine. I like Bing Crosby. I like Perry Como.
Sure.
A lot of singers, not just pop singers, but some of the great classical singers as well.
You know what I wanted to ask you? Did you ever meet her, Russ Columbo?
Did I ever meet who?
Russ Columbo?
Never met Russ Columbo. No, I never met him. As a matter of fact, when he was a big man, he popular, and they were looking at putting him into the movies.
Right, he made a couple, I guess.
Huh?
He made a couple of films, and then he passed
Yeah,
away.
he made a couple of films, but I don't think that was really something he wanted to do. And then, of course, I believe it was what was her name? Carol
Lombard.
Lombard, that
Right.
he accidentally killed himself.
And Sally Blaine, I think he used to go
Huh?
out. Didn't he used to go out with Sally Blaine, too, I think?
Yeah, Sally Blaine, another very pretty girl.
Yeah.
And no, that was a different traffic that I was moving in. I wasn't quite popular enough to get into that traffic. I did meet Crosby
Yeah.
and became very friendly with Bing. As a matter of fact, Exclusive Records was on Vine. Our company was right on the corner of Vine and Sunset, and next to us was the Carpenter's Drive-In. And I went over there one day during my lunch period while recording there at the studio, and I was sitting in the car, and the next car to me, the guy sung out Blackberry. That record was pretty popular at the time, and I looked over, and I said, God, that looks like Bing Crosby. And so I looked over, and he said, "Hey, Jeffries." And he says, "I got that record of yours." And I said, "Just one?" He said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, I got a whole bunch of yours."
Yeah.
And so he said, "Oh, my kids love it, you know." I said, "How about you?" He says, "Oh, well, I'm the one that bought it."
There you go.
So we got out of the car, and I went over to the car he was sitting in, convertible, the top was down, and spoke to him. And he told me he was working across the street at NBC doing his show. Come over and visit sometime.
Oh, wow.
Have lunch. So I did, and we did have lunch, and we became pretty good friends. He was a golfer, and I was a golfer, so we had a lot in common.
Oh, wow. You know, you did a great album a few years back called I Remember the Bing.
Yeah, I did do that. My goodness, you remember that.
Should we play a cut from it? In honor of Bing, Pennies from Heaven.
Okay.
Right here.
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You'll find your fortunes falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trade them for a package of sunshine and flowers. If you want the things you love, you must have showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me. Trade them for a package of sunshine and flowers. If you want the things you love, you must have showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me.
Mr. Herb Jeffries with a salute to Bing Crosby there from the album I Remember the Bing, Pennies from Heaven. And we have Herb Jeffries with us live here on KSVY 91.3. And Herb, that really is a great album.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I think I had a tendency to do some of his little impersonation on him, too, trying to sound a bit like him. But, strictly an impersonation because nobody could ever sound like Bing Crosby.
Right, one of a kind, as you are yourself. And I have to say that you're still performing and doing a great job, and your voice is as good as it ever has been. That's all I can tell you. And by looking at you, you'd think you're 62 years old. So,
well, there's a few things that I do with that to try to prove to people that you don't have to age as fast as you are. A stress factor has a lot to do with it, but it is true that the only thing in all of creation that, let's see, how does it go? It goes this way. The only thing that is constant in all of creation is change. We have to change. It's okay to change, and it's nice to change. I like looking at the change in myself. But you don't have to get old. We use that word behind everything, including people saying, my little boy is 16 months old. How are you going to get old in 16 months?
right.
21 years. Methuselah lived 900. My goodness, where did we go wrong?
Yeah.
So I figure that, barring accident and making foolish mistakes, why, we can live a lot longer. There is a country up above Pakistan called the Hansa country.
Yeah.
And they live to be 165 years old up there. So, and we are extending our ages now, what with the good vitamins and things. I think is learn to love yourself.
Right.
Is what the answer of it is.
And you are a follower or a good friend of Eden Abez. Isn't that correct?
Well, you mean Paramahansa?
Eden
Oh,
Abez.
Eden Abez was a great friend of mine who was into the Eastern teachings and also had a great love and respect for a teacher of mine as well, and many others, by the name of Paramahansa Yogananda.
Yeah.
It didn't take me away from my original studies and my teachings of Christianity.
Right.
It helped me to have a better understanding with Christianity, and not to just accept it because my mother and father taught me to go that route. I went into it a little deeper and started to go a little bit further into it, and found out that what he was teaching was the philosophy of the man that we call Christ.
Right.
And so, when you break it down, it just take the words he said and break his spoken words down into what they meant. It makes a difference. As I say, like I said before, he says, love thy neighbor as I love thyself. Well, you have to love yourself first. And then, of course, there are many other things. If you take and analyze what he said, I think it's a good philosophy to live by. And you don't really have to, you just have to be spiritual.
Right, and you are.
That'll get it, you know.
Right. And it's sure doing the trick for you because you're better than you ever were.
Well, God bless you.
And thank your lovely wife, Savannah, too, for arranging this interview today.
Yes.
And she really is a great light in your life.
Huh?
She really is a great light in your life, the love of your life.
Oh, my goodness. Listen, let me tell you what. It took me a long time to find my mate.
Right.
You know, I think we have to analyze that word, too, you know.
Sure.
You know, I'm a man, and I don't know how a woman thinks.
Right.
And I had to find a woman who helped me to begin to understand that other part of our life that we're looking for, our mate.
Right.
And that's what we do. We find a woman who teaches us how to think the way a woman thinks, and then we teach them how to think the way men think. And then once we put the two of them together properly, where they balance out, I think to the point of where you have equal admiration for her physical beauty, her mental beauty, and her spiritual beauty. My goodness, you couldn't find a better gold mine than that.
No, and you sure struck it. There's a gold mine in the sky. I'm just thinking of that song
You
by
better
Bang.
believe it, baby.
Well, Herb, I guess the hour is almost up here, and I really want to thank you for spending this time with us here at KSVY. And I guess we're going to finish out, and we're going to finish up with Flamingo. And tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. And
All
let
right.
me tell you what, I can't tell you how much Savannah and I enjoyed your performance at the Sweet and Hot Jazz Festival.
Oh, I thank you.
We really enjoyed it. It was a great relief for us to come off the stage with a little bit of stress and tension.
Sure, yeah.
After that, and then come out and be relaxed by your singing. So,
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and you inspire me, believe me.
well, we'd love to hear more of you, Guy.
Well, I love you.
I love you too.
And
Take care and God bless you.
Talk to you soon. Thanks
All
again.
right. Please do. Say hello to your mom.
I will. Thank you, Herb.
Bye-bye.
Herb Jeffries, one of the great entertainers, and here's his theme song right here.
Flamingo, like a flame in the sky, flying over the island to my lover nearby. Flamingo, with your tropical hue, for it's you I rely on, and a love that is true. The wind sings a song to you as you go. A song that I hear below the murmuring pond. Flamingo, when the sun meets the sea, say farewell to my lover and hasten to me. The wind sings a song to you as you go, a song that I hear below the murmuring pond. when the sun meets the sea. Say farewell to my lover and hasten to meet